All right, what are we doing this morning? Some more of this? All right. I think that's a good idea. We'll do more of this, right? So what colors do I need to start with this morning? Let's see, I think we can lower this down a little bit. Not too much. I need to get that mirror out of the way to a certain degree. It's messing with my vibe. Too much light. Does that even things out if I knock it down? Always a struggle with the lighting, I think. What are we doing today? Let's see, yesterday we worked on mostly there. We added these new things in. So depending on, I might need to add a little bit more in some other places just so we have a bit more consistency. It's too wet. Better. I haven't broken the lighting yet, though, so that's good. So get a little bit of colors down here. Need to find my brushes too. Those out. Let's see, I need this one and this one. This one. There we go, not you. Alright, put both back. Alright. Hi, Bosch. Good morning. I'm sorry, I'm bothering you. Alright. Some blue. Alright, I think that's good for now. Of colors. Good morning. Alright, what is next here? Scoot forward. Sorry, China. I'm moving you around a little bit. I just need to scoot you over just a little bit. There we go. Sorry. Let's see. Let's turn that one off. I think I prefer this just being the only light source. That's better for me. That feels better. What I could really use a splurge on, need some soft boxes and a different kind of rig over my desk. All right, so we got that stuff going. We need to put stuff in that window a little bit. Something easy to start with. You'd like some of that. There we go. Another eyeball up there. Sorry, Bob, am I bothering you? Poor dog. He suffers so well. I want to imply maybe there's something down here peeking through. That was just a larger part of the overall. Something like that, I think. Thicken these up a bit more. And then let's see, I need some pinky purples. Did I offend you, Bob? Why don't you come lay down? Poor dog. I moved some stuff, and that was too much. That's better. Good morning. Too much. Good morning, good morning. I've got a little more color in here. Do want to keep the tonality low, but I don't mind introducing some color so that we can sauce it up a little bit. Let's see. Let's see. Just correcting some of this stuff. Yeah, definitely get painting, right? No excuses. Other than, feeding yourself and taking care of a family. Getting the dog out for a WALK during the day. I guess he went in the other room to lay down. Said he was tired. Dogs do not handle the time change very well at all. Not explain why it didn't show up. Alright, let's go over here. Good morning, boss. Welcome back. You look out the window. Let's see. Alright, let's continue. Scatter some of this artwork around here. Let's see. looks better. Ugh, that's not the color I grabbed. There we go. How does that? That's her shoulder. Her elbow, rather. Mhm. Good morning. Good morning. Let's see. That's a little better. All right, where was I? Hmm. Good morning. Itch on my back. Good morning. All right, let's see. Good morning. see, where's that pose? There we go. That makes more sense. Good morning. Yeah, that was better. All right, what next, huh? It's been about 45 minutes. Oh, we got our first bot of the day. All right. I need to have this something up here leading into that. kind of adapting some of the composition as I go, just to get a little more depth. That's better. Good morning. All right. All right. Green out and scatter that a little bit. There. All right. So what is next? What are we going to resolve? Bring that in front of there. Speed applies. Yeah, it's above as well. Here. 9:30. Ah. Hi, Bosh. How you doing? Oh. We'll bring a little Good. Wow, hello over there on Twitch. Thanks for coming in. Just looked over at the chat and looked up in a second. So how's it going over there? I appreciate that. Very kind of you to say. On my little morning study, usually spend about an hour or so on this. If you haven't been in here before, I might spend like 2 on this just because why not? So I put a little bit of a overall darker value image, just kind of correcting some of the drawing here today in some of these areas, make sure I don't lose what I've done. Let's see. Well, yeah, that is my job, right? That is the day job. We're on spring break this week, so I get to spend every day at home working on stuff. So that is nice. Oh yeah, I think everybody's an artist, right? To some degree. I appreciate that. Yeah, I got had a post go off on Instagram recently. I still don't understand why. So most of them you'll get maybe like a few hundred likes or whatever, a few thousand views, and I've got one on there for some reason. It's like I think it's coming up on 33,000 likes. I don't understand why. Why that one hit the algorithm the way it did, or people liking it. Like there's just one of these. It was actually a morning study just from a photo. I was just filling in the background, so I covered up the main character just to keep from painting over it. So I just filled the page with studies, and it wasn't that particularly important to me. But for some reason, other people really liked it. I don't know if just I held up the if I just because I taped over it or something. Some people have implied that he's doing things that he's not doing. Because I would just basically do like 3 figures and then fill in the gaps in between all of them. So the whole page was just like uh, just random photos that I just assembled together. There's no intent or meaning beyond me just practicing acrylics. Um, but apparently it hit somebody somewhere. And I don't understand. But I always worry, if you ever want to chase the algorithm because you end up like in that case, if I were to try to do something similar, maybe it would hit, but it might not be the kind of thing I actually really want to do. Yeah. Well, I think there's details and there's details, right? There's details that help and details that turn away. So I'm trying to set this up so it's a little bit of a lower key painting, but I can put as much stuff as I want into it. That's why I stuck that thing back there and stuff. Yeah, I'm always super focused when I'm working. I kind of disappear into the work. Especially when I get closer to the end of something, I really just fade away completely. I think we're about to the point where maybe next time I'll come in, I can start kind of working from back to front. One of my goals I should do is I want to be implementing more of this in here. I've been studying using these guys. I'm wondering maybe if I throw a little tone on here. But they've got a bunch of acrylic inks. See, I got blue, I got some brown, I took the new brown, the old one's my nasty. Got some orange, that's too much. If I just mix some violet and blue together, that could be good. And see what this does. I'm trying to not be too precious with these things, and I haven't gotten to the point yet where maybe that's a big concern. Looks like that one with some more water. Yeah, thanks for coming in. I appreciate it. Basically, that's how I usually the first thing in the morning is come in and do this. I'm gonna set the board in a bit. To get some more of this color. And a little bit of flow improver. Have a mix in the cup, so you put your finger over the tip, let the air out, and then pull back. Actually, I need to use the finger, huh? Let's see how that looks. I'll throw some of this. I'm not for this transparent colors though. Just need to dump a lot more of this in here. All right, a little more purple. Let's just see how this works. I actually want to cover at least the side off. Yeah, I've been trying to learn airbrushing. Let's see. It's not a tool that I've ever been trained on or I'm familiar with. Well, it's somewhat similar to acrylic, where like I haven't really used acrylic in forever, and so I should probably put something on the other side too. Put this down before I spill it. But I'm not an expert at it all. I've been practicing. Yeah, stream YouTube. I do like a multi-stream thing, so I'm on Instagram. I've got on my my phone's streaming the Instagram side of things, and then yeah, YouTube. I use DLive and Kick as well. Top of Twitch. DLive though, it's something happened where like the algorithm there got mad at me really bad. Like, still don't know what I did. Work on it. It's a double action thing. You're supposed to push down, let the air out, and then you pull back, and then you're not supposed to like stop letting the air out. I kind of slip on that pretty often. I want to see if I can't get a blue effect. The main thing for me is like just not losing my drawing. Yeah, so yeah, I stream. Yeah, I set that set up so I'm streaming in those places. But yeah, I hit something on the DLive thing where they're like, "You are streaming inappropriate stuff," and I'm like, "I am not," but their bot thinks I was for some reason. Um, um, but it was like, yeah, it was yelling at me hard. Nobody else was. Just that I think it thought my thumb was something that it was not. Oops. I'm sure I didn't get any of that ink on my face. So that was weird. A while back. All right, that was good to get that on there. I think. I'm always mixing too much paint too, so I've got like a little pile in here that I use up to some degree. Let's see if I've got little bit like smaller cups that I have to dump stuff into. And then let's see. Wipe out the inside of the cup. Yeah, so go ahead and follow over there. I do put up like shorts on there, the same ones I put on the Instagram. So for whatever reasons, yesterday's did not get off. But I'm not sure what's going on with these algorithms. But did not like it for some reason. I thought it was okay, but I don't get to decide everything. I did put my airbrush cleaner into a mister spray bottle. then I want to try out some of this white. With a little bit of, well, maybe I'll spray white and then I'll do the yellow on top of that. That might make more sense. To give it a little bit of a glow. Let's see how this goes. Let's just put some this in here. Yeah, there's certain mediums that have always kind of bothered me that I'm not as familiar with. So one of those is acrylic. Okay, that's better. Yeah, one of those is acrylic. And then kind of airbrushing has to a certain degree. And actually, the main reason I really wanted to use it was just like a less messy way of splattering. Yeah, I was practicing the other day with this tool. I realized I've been doing, holding it wrong. Go out. And then I want to put some warmth in there. So I've got this transparent yellow, maybe some orange, tangerine. It mixes with the white a little bit in there. So let's start with some yellow. If I've ever opened this yet. Yeah, they were suggesting in some of the videos I watched you kind of do a color progression. I don't mind painting over this stuff. Some some warm. It's red. How my dog knows about this noise. He doesn't like noise very much. Another eyeball. She go. I thought she was right there. Bring your songs together. All right. Spray some cleaner in there. So side. Finish cleaning it out. Great. Well, that was fun. But yeah, there's certain tools that kind of that are out there that I've always kind of been sitting in the back of my head, like airbrushing or acrylic. It wasn't so much that I really, really wanted to learn them, but it was more of a situation where it's like I felt like it was kind of getting in my way that I didn't understand them very well. Like with acrylic, I used that as a student, but it was really frustrating for me back then. I think kind of come to accept and realize that maybe the problem wasn't so much the medium as it was the artist. And so I decided to think about things a little bit differently. All right. I have to see what's strong color. There we go. With my little tiny brush. Yeah, so I started, wanting to think about things a little bit differently and move toward these goals. I probably should just tear out this sheet. Now I can move this paper around without having to do that today, without having to fight its positions as much. But yeah, so I realized, maybe the frustrations I had with it as a student were more of a me problem than a medium problem. Because obviously, I took all the time, and I'm starting to look at last semester I had a class. I've mentioned it before on stream, but I had a class I had to teach last semester where I had to use it. And so as a result, I was like, well, we'll see what we can do with this semester. And I did a piece that I actually really liked. And I was like, well, maybe I should play around with this some more. So I was, looking that because of the class, we were also looking at painters or illustrators who use it pretty extensively. And so I was kind of looking at their different types of techniques that they would employ as well with it, alongside subject matter and other things. But I was really paying attention to kind of how they would lay the paint out, because I can kind of read what others do, and to a certain degree, because I can look at what they're painting. It's like, oh, look, they're putting down. I can look through the layers and I see, oh, look, there's a base coat, and then there's a cross hatching on top of that, or another coat on top of that. And then I was reading some notes from Michael Whalen on his website. He's a longtime book cover illustrator. He only posts on Kara, I think, because of their AI stance. And but he has notes on his own website. He talks about like the kinds of paints he uses, why, and the effect that they have on his work. Let's see, her back should be coming in. Oops, light comes in over here. Oops, go up. Move the arm a little bit, but just to show some of her back. There. Goes up. So, yeah. So anyway, result of that class, I was like, oh yeah, I should give this stuff another shot, and I should start doing a lot of studies with it. And since I started being, an artist, in school, when I graduated in 2004, it's been a while, and so I've learned a few things, I think, since then. And then on top of, everything else that's going on, like the AI nonsense, maybe just kind of want to lean more into, I prefer analog media, but people say traditional media, um, as a result of its prevalence and influence. I want to be sure I'm paying attention to really kind of refocusing those skills. And I've got, a long experience with different media, but um, so I want to do a number. Well, I did a bunch of studies, and that's one of the things that popped off on that Instagram. And I still don't know exactly why. The juxtaposition of those images worked to attract that attention. And then but I was doing the studies, and then I want to start. These are basically on mixing references together. So I have a whole bunch of like those art packs, those figure drawing packs that people sell on ArtStation or Gumroad or whatever. And so I've got a bunch of those. I thought, well, maybe I'll start using some of those. Use those. I'd rather just like paint the figures in the nude. But online stuff, they really yell at you for doing that. So, um, even if you're not doing anything that exciting with it. So, so I thought what I'd do is instead it's like maybe do a practice kind of making these kind of sort of illustrations where basically I'm taking a pose reference, a costume, and some other elements and kind of just adding them together to make a little story. And so that's what this is doing here is I'm just like taking that reference, then making a little composition that hopefully tells a little bit of the story in it. And then once I finish off the sketchbook, so the second half here, I want to start doing some pieces related to my comic book project. Some concept art, key art type paintings, like the type that Ralph McQuarrie or Doug Chang would do. And kind of add those into the mix. And then what I'm doing here is I'm kind of going in and painting in mostly ambient occlusions into the shadows. If you work a lot digitally, they have ways of like layering up the paint. And one of the ways you can do is you can kind of set a multiply layer and add in called ambient occlusion, which is where you basically have the deepest, darkest parts of the shadows kind of painted in. I want to avoid going completely to black in these, but that's kind of what I'm doing here. Just making sure we're kind of using the ambience to kind of clean up the drawing a little bit. Yeah, practicing the airbrush as a new thing that I would like to have comfort in using in different ways. So I'm not necessarily going to do like full blown airbrush paintings, but I think it'd be really to have some ability to say paint a gradient in the sky, or you can also use it for splattering ink. Um, just part of why I got it. And then yeah, kind of being able to do mixed media approaches. There's a I can't remember his name. I can never remember his name because it's a Spanish name, but he's Filipino. And he's a really interesting painter. And I just need to sit down and try to remember his name. He's really great, interesting kind of Filipino painter. And he uses kind of an airbrush on larger pieces. Of course, there's also people like his face, Giger. His use a lot of airbrushing. In a way, I think it doesn't look like your typical kind of airbrush picture. Not that there's anything wrong with eagles on the sides of vans or T-shirts or whatever, but I'm looking for a little something else. I think with it. But I do find it helpful, to think about things like the things I've learned in painting digitally and applying them to traditional media. The different, like painting with different parts of the light. You can do that in different layers, obviously, on the computer, which you really can't do here. But you can still employ that same kind of thinking on here, which I think is very, very helpful. All right, we'll give it 25 more minutes. Good morning. Good morning. We got quite the storm out there, huh, puppy? Look at that wind and rain. Let's see, where are you at? Oh, there you are. Is that oil? It is acrylics. Hello over there on Twitch. Yeah, so I did some light painting on top of this with some transparent inks. And so I'm just kind of going through it, just sharpening up edges that I want to sharpen up. So I have a background in oil painting, so I am treating this to a certain degree like I would an oil painting. In terms of like the layering of the paint. I'm glad it reads, yeah. I have a little bit harder time myself. So what I need to do is actually, it's on the sketchbook, and I'm really just going to use this front page anyway, so I should just rip this out, and then I can move this around a little more easily. Which would just make my life a little bit simpler. I was just listening to a video by Rick Beato. He's comments on his background in music, and he comments on the music industry, and he's been commenting on AI stuff lately. But he just released a strange video, which I don't like AI at all. I fall into the category of hater. But yeah, I was just watching his video. He said some interesting things, but he's like he was demoing how to install a local LLM on your computer, so you don't have to use the main ones, right? Like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, Anthropic stuff or Grok. It's like, why are you giving your data to them? And blah 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 blah. And he's like, yeah, you could run this on your home computer. It's just like the recording industry where we switched from one technology to another a long time ago, and where like recording software and hardware was really really expensive, and now it's really really cheap. You can record at home, so you should be doing that with AI. And he's been releasing like AI hater stuff, which I appreciate, but this was like seemed to be very much kind of an ambassador for AI. And but he was trying to make a point that the data centers aren't going to be profitable in the long term because um, of that fact that you can install these LLMs at home and run them. But he's missing the other side of the equation. It's not just the inference or the output of AI that you're getting from these programs, or what the reason for the data center's existence are. The other half of the equation is the training, and that comes from somewhere. It comes from those data centers. It's actually a huge part of the expense that doesn't get factored in um, to the question. So it's just weird that he's like making this video, like talking about how excited he is that he can do this at home and you don't have to use their things and it's going to kill the data centers and blah blah blah. And I'm like, that's not how they work. I think there's people commenting in the comments that were saying that too, so I didn't feel the need to add my voice into the void of thousands of comments on his video. I mean, I guess you could train it on your own stuff, um, but um, so so I think he's dead wrong. I see that once in a while from people who, they kind of have mixed views on the subject, and I think they're hoping that it just works out right. And I just don't see. Um, yeah, so it's like, yeah, so it's, yeah, he's missing that half of the equation. It's kind of an important half. You have to be able to, if, in order for these systems to function like they want, that they say they do or want them to, you have to have fresh data being put into these systems. Otherwise, you're getting bad info. Like he was showing off, like, how do you get, he was give me a day in London, right? A day trip in London, keep it inexpensive, and um, and that way you can, have a good time in London. And I'm like, well, that only really works if you have like actual information from London that's current. Like it doesn't work just because you have the data set that you downloaded most recently. If you haven't updated your thing and put your training back into their system or whatever, or download the latest version with the parameters, then you're missing information. And of course, the AI systems hallucinate anyway. But if you're trying to like use it in that way, it's kind of backwards thinking. Yeah, so but that was what he was showing there. He's like, well, what if he's probably like, I've met people who are like, well, maybe it's okay if you run it on your own systems, right? And you run it on your own data, and you're using a localized model, and that's less bad. And I mean, I guess it's less bad. It's still not good, and it doesn't deal with all the other harms that it causes. Even if they solve the energy problem and the intellectual property problem, all these studies are showing quite conclusively that AI literally makes you dumber. Um, and Well, I mean, there's just that all by itself. It makes you less creative. It makes you less invested in your work. Causes you to lose skills you had. And it's not like all skills are worth having. Like someone I saw in the comments there as I was just scrolling through briefly a second ago was just saying, oh, back in 1985, or 84, or 83 rather, everyone was doing hand drafting of plans, right, for buildings. So you had rooms full of architects. It was a big career. You would just go in and you would draw plans all day long using certain kinds of paper and pens, and there'd be a whole room of people drafting architectural plans. And now, a year later, they bought this software at their computer at their university to be able to do that there. And then a year after that, Apple put out a version on their Mac in the mid 80s that ran on a local Mac for very cheap. But that's a different kind of thing. Um, though I think it's pretty inarguable that most architecture today is actually worse than it was even back in the 80s. Um, everything's built to fall apart now. They don't build anything to last. It's all built to be torn down. I've been surprised how long certain things last. Like I was back home at my parents. Well, not my parent. For um, for my father's funeral, and they I noticed like the like a number of like the stores that I had shot kid, like the Taco Bell, as disposable as a building you can build, right? It's still there, like from when I was a high school student in the 90s. Um, so I guess that's pretty permanent, right? That's like 1990. Say let's say even after this year, as I graduated in 96. So let's say 92 or whatever, it was already there at least, if not earlier. It could have been there since the 80s, as far as I know. Um, but it was a long time coming. It was a long road for him. He got brain cancer, and for at least it was he was kind of lucky in a partial sense that it was it's the kind that can kill someone in months once it's been discovered. Most people with that brain cancer don't live much beyond like a few months. Like it's just it's one of those, like all cancers, you can't cure it. It's just you can put things into remission, but this is a brain cancer, and those are just really hard to deal with. But he had the variation of it that allowed him to get treatment and allowed him to live for 2 more years beyond that diagnosis. Well, actually, a little bit over 2 years, like 2 years and a week. Uh, I got to spend Thanksgiving break with them just before he passed, but I would have stayed because I was, I didn't anticipate. I thought he would last a little bit longer than he did, but once he started going down, it was very very quick. So well, that's you get older and everybody else gets older. Um, so, but it was really hard on him because he was he had just achieved a whole bunch of things. He was his early 70s, and he'd won an election. And he was a county commissioner. And was doing the things that he loves to do, and then that just like all stopped. So I don't feel so bad for myself. It's rough, losing a parent, but for him, it was like he just like was halfway through his first term, doing all these things he wanted to accomplish, and had to had to stop. Um, he held on to it for a while. It wasn't like a heavy duty job where you're there every single day and you're sitting making decisions all the time. So he held on to it for most of the rest of his term, but um, so that was good. So yeah, so he was So it's called a glioblastoma, um, and actually it's funny. I was reading a comic book, a graphic novel I have. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's by Mark Miller and illustrated by Scalera, and it's about a spy who finds out he has that same cancer, and he's someone who's kind of worked. He's kind of like he's a James Bond type character, but he's like a more realistic one. So he's been serving the Blair and the kind of U.S. foreign policy thing since the 60s or whatever. The all the interventions and terrible things that these countries, including my own, have been involved with for a very long time. And so he kind of has a crisis of conscience facing his death, and he goes through and starts eliminating and undoing all of those things as much as he can. So he's assassinating world leaders, and he's stopping terrorist things from happening, and passing on information. But yeah, he has that. But he had the kind that like you just don't last very long. Like you go down pretty quick. Um, um, yeah, but I was I'd read it before. I think it's called King of Spies. Um, but I just thought it was interesting. I was like, oh, look at that. There's that. I probably had when I read it a long time when I read it when I first got it. Uh, I hadn't really noticed the diagnosis in there, the specific brain cancer he had. And I was rereading, and I was like, wait a second. So, but yeah, but it's brain cancer is one thing. It's terrible. It's a terrible terrible thing. But brain cancer is just especially bad because it hits your ability to think. Uh, do a lot of the mental work that you're used to doing, and that was the hard part for him. Was he just was tired and he couldn't read and write as well as he did before, and it's not fair, but so but yeah, I thought it was an interesting coincidence, interesting alignment of things. How we go for time? 2 hours? Oh, I should probably stop. So I think with the picture anyway, I think I'm at the point where I can start really working on finishing. I just was playing with this area over here, but I want to cut this out of the book so I can, like, it's easier to get these long lines if I can just turn the picture sideways and pull the paint that way. And um, so I'm working on inking those pages I've been penciling the last while. Yeah, generally speaking, that's the general rule. There's different ways of working, so that's kind of an alla prima approach. What I'm using here is more of a layered, what I call a layered approach. And so basically, what it is, you set up lights and darks, and you layer things together. It's hard to see that, I think, in the video or even in print or a photograph. But one of the things that kind of gives like an old master painting its glow is basically one of the things that they do is they basically set up a situation where they paint opacities over transparencies and transparency over opacity. So basically, like over here, it's fairly transparent. But if I were to go through here and match or get a little bit lighter version of this transparent color, paint over that, and then paint transparency over, you kind of get layers of transparent and opaque paint. And it kind of feels that's part of what makes an old master painting glow is that mixture of those two elements over and over and over again on top of each of this. That's what makes like a Rembrandt painting glow. And actually, with oil paint, like they were using flake white or lead based white, and lead white is, you know, if you've ever worked with it, I like it a lot. It's very it's relatively transparent. I think the most transparent white is zinc, which I don't really use. Um, but the other thing with oil paint is the paints themselves get more transparent with time. I don't know that that's true with acrylic as much. So by not just going light to dark, but going transparent over opaque and opaque over transparent, it creates a lot of depth. And so I kind of add on the lights on top of those darker areas. I'm trying to keep them within like a relatively low key for the picture. Give it a little more dramatic lighting. I was looking at these Piotr Jablonski Photoshop images. I might go back to that, but I think it would help if I was doing something larger to really get the atmospheric effects that he gets in his pictures. Um, so it's I trained. I went to grad school at the New York Academy of Art, and they tend to do a lot of kind of more old masters type work. I wouldn't even call it like 19th century. A lot of people kind of conflate the two. But it's older than that. It's usually what they kind of tend to focus on. I mean, they are a contemporary art school to a certain degree, but they're more traditional in that way. Like we had a class where we go to the Met Museum in New York and do copies. So I copied Rembrandt, I copied Peter de Hoogh, I copied Velasquez's in New York. I copied A. Velasquez, Rubens, and kind of practicing layering up their paint and how they layered their paint and apply it to my own work, especially when I'm working in layers like this. So, so it's a well understood technique. In fact, you can buy like books from like say the National Gallery, and it'll have in there like diagrams showing the different layers of paint that Velasquez used or Rembrandt used. Like they can do these X-rays, and they can grab like a little tiny piece of paint that's fallen off, or they can chip off and then put back thing. It's a little bit weird, but they can pull these off and do like put them under the microscope, and you can see the layers right there. like in the microscope. Yeah, I like the indirect approaches. I do direct painting if I'm going outside. Like if I'm working with gouache outside, I tend to do things in the direct painting method where you're just color matching. Um, there's nothing wrong with it. Um, but so yeah, but I like these approaches. So the painters I was looking at for acrylic when I kind of got back into it last semester was people like James Christensen, James C. Christensen. Christensen spelled with a lot of E's as opposed to A's. Um, he's passed away now, but he's famous for kind of his puffy dwarf paintings and fairies and elves and things like that. And he would sell prints back when that was a big thing. But he had this method where you kind of paint in the flat color and then you kind of cross hatch on top. And I've been trying to use that a lot on these too. Um, well, the direct stuff does. The fat over lean is still really important when you are working in layers. That's actually when it's most important. Um, so as you add on more and more layers, you have to add more oil to it. A lot of people conflate fat over lean with thick over thin, which isn't accurate at all. But often they kind of get merged together. It's like scumbling versus glazing. People tend to think of scumbling as dry brushing, which it's not. Um, but uh, but they can happen. Dry brushing and scumbling can happen at the same time, but they are separate techniques. Like you can dry brush a glaze over something. But I think fat over lean is especially important in these old master styles. If that's what you were saying. Um, but yeah, direct painting it doesn't really matter as much because you're just putting everything down in one layer. It does and it doesn't matter kind of thing where you do like you're using thicker paint, you probably use more oil in it, just because it can spread apart pretty easily. I do. So what I've been doing with these pictures lately, so this one and the last one, basically I have these reference packs I've bought, or there's free ones too you can find, and like if you go digging around on ArtStation, you'll notice almost all of them have like a free or a number of free sample packs. I don't remember if this one. I'd have to go back and check this one if it's paid or not, but um, so yeah, so I'm using that, and then I'm taking some Pinterest reference and mixing that with what I have here. Yeah, so that's what I think. But yeah, that's what I've been doing. So I've just been doing these as kind of a way of practicing mixing elements together. So I've got images, they're based around these wood shapes, and I've got images that are, for the little jellyfish that are there, for the wall. Um, and so I'm just trying to kind of mix these things together, put them under, a new lighting situation. So yeah, so it's a mix of things. 2:11. I really should stop. I'm having a good time though. That's what's going on with this guy. Got a wet day outside. Yeah, so I think most of it now is just like going through and detailing everything and making sure I don't lose the atmosphere that I'm trying to get in here. So, but yeah, so I'm having a good time though. So, you know, so I guess I'll go another 10 minutes and then I'll have lunch, get cleaned up, and get on to the other things after that. So the hand, yeah, it's just part of the layering. So there's like I haven't worked. That's a really small detail. So what I'll probably do is I like to finish certain areas. Like I'll probably finish this area next time. I'll focus on the portrait, and then I'll try to work back to front. So we work on the background stuff. So there's stuff is inside the building and coming out of the building, and then kind of step forward through the painting, which is kind of how I like to work. This hand right here, though, it's a mechanical hand. So I'm looking at a robot arm, and I've added an extra. It has like a little tube thing on the end of the hand, and I've added on like an extra one. So it's kind of like a two-fingered thing. So basically, it comes up this, there, and then it comes out over here is another finger. And then if we were to like mix some warm white together, yeah, but that's what's going on there. So in case you're wondering, this goes like right there. I can kind of see that. Yeah, so watch that Rick Beto video and let me know what you think. I always find it strange, but I've often found with people and generative AIs, they always tend to put the limit of its use exactly where they are at. So like he would never consider using it to make music. Like that would just never be anything he would do, but then he's using it for research, for other things, right? Um, which is weird because like if you understand how it works, like it might get things right. It might. Um, but it has a high probability of getting them wrong or injecting enough wrong things in there that it's impossible to tell if you're not expert in that area. And I found that to be generally true with a lot of people that like it. Like, well, I don't use it for this thing, um, or I do use it for this other thing, but it would never get in the way of this other thing that I'm actually really good at. I remember like was it Mark Andreessen, famous businessman and venture guy, or not venture investor, and he's saying, well, what we'll really need in the future is we won't need this kind of person or this kind of job or this kind of profession. What we'll need are venture capitalists. And I'm like, oh, so you look at that. That's shocked, 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 shocked. Um, that you would think that you would happen to be the necessary kind of person in a world where we are actively using the slot bots. Um, and so I was looking out. So I kind of see that with Rick and he's like, well, look, you can run a localized LLM and blah 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 blah. Or you see these companies like Maxon who make ZBrush, and they're like actively like shoving AI into their systems, and people are like, we don't want it in ZBrush. Like, please don't put it in there. They're like, no, 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 it'll be great. You'll love it. And people are like, no, we don't want it. And then something like Nomad Sculpt comes along, which it isn't as in depth as ZBrush, but you can do all most of your sculpting in there. It does other things that are really unique. And now it's on the desktop. Um, like it's even let's paint this little edge in here. Now it's on the desktop, was like it's even more accessible to more people on both platforms, and it's made by one guy out in France, a French guy, and yeah, but I see that all the time from AI people. It's like, well, I would never use it for this thing. It's like I had a friend send me a free code to some software he put together, which allows you to kind of search your various drives. So it kind of documents your different drives. So whether that drive is plugged into your computer or not, you can search for a file. And he sends me this page where it's like his sales page for it, with the code so I get the free version. And it's just like AI imagery all over the place. And he works at a place where I used to work. He quit working there for a little bit and then went back, um, Ringling. And I'm like, dude, this is not okay. Like, I don't like this. And don't really have use for the software itself just because my file system isn't that complicated. I'm not spending a lot of time looking for files on my computer. But I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like the way the department over there changed into like an AI forward department. And I know that it did it out of fear, which I also do not like. Um, I don't like people making decisions because they're afraid of something. Like I know the department chair there, and he's someone I really respected a lot, and still do in a lot of ways. But he made his decision to kind of push AI into the department, not because he's like, oh, this is amazing, beautiful, wonderful software that's going to make our lives so much better. He did it because he was afraid of what it's capable of and the students being left behind. And there's a lot of things he did as a department chair that I thought was really respectable. His efforts to kind of bring people together and create a common vision and unity and these things that are hard to do. Like I was really impressed by his ability to do that. Um, but it's like, even if it's as useful as they say it is and easy to use as people say it is, the AI bros are funny because they'll be like, at one breath they'll talk about how easy it is and how it makes their life so much better, and then next breath they'll talk about all the different challenges that they're having making it work for themselves. Like, well, which is it? Is it easy or is it representative of real work? It's like there was a guy who did this AI thing, and he even had like a whole little documentary about the effort he went through. In the background, you can see his computer and the Photoshop file is open on his computer, and there's 5 layers. So he was probably just he got his AI image, he upscaled it, and then he was extending it, and then there was the text on top, and that was the full extent of his efforts. It was just sad. It's like, oh wow, you really went through a lot putting together those five layers. You've seen that a number of times. It was like the Coca-Cola that came out over Christmas. They released a concept art video, where they're showing off all the work they went through to come up with their ideas and their designs and their layouts and how hard they'd worked at doing this project. And all of the concept art was like fake. And they showed them like sketching over an iPad, doing some character sketches, which the designs of which don't show up in the actual show. They're like Zootopia style animal characters, which aren't in the video at all that I recall. But it's obvious when they're drawing over these things in Procreate that the pencil isn't on. It's not connected. Yeah, Tears for Fears, they should have plenty of cash, right? They're probably like, well, it's cool and it's neat and it's the kids are into it and they're all probably in their 60s or whatever. Flock of Seagulls did the same thing. They had a AI cover, so I haven't listened to the albums. Um, but um, yeah, so it's like I listen to people talk and I get confused. I've had people tell me that are like really high level, respected people in their professions and in their area, like their field. Among their colleagues, they've worked on big projects over the decades, and I've had people like that tell me that they find generative AI outputs to be more creative than they are. And I know that's not true, but they feel that way. It's quite disconcerting to me to hear people say that, because it's like that's not true. Maybe it's hopefully it's not true. I don't think it is, but you're saying that, which is very odd and disturbing to say. I don't know. Oh, the Psych TV show. I remember that existed. I never watched it. I think my mom watched it. Um, if I recall. Um, I've heard of it. I think I may have seen a pilot a long time ago. I've never watched it. Yeah. Well, that's the other thing with AI. It's like it can only do things that have already been done. It doesn't make new information. The only like real like practical use I've seen in terms of like a scientific study were these limited trained ones where they kind of matched up like potential molecule connections, creation of different molecules, complex proteins or whatever. And but that kind of thing has existed for a long time. The ability to do it as quick as they can now is really what's different. Like large language models have been around for like 40 years, like they're or longer. Like they're not new. Um, um, oh yeah. I do find with a lot of those bands, like there's like an early to mid period where like their work is their best work, like like you too, right? So Octung Baby is probably their last like really great album. There's good stuff on the subsequent albums, but it's never gets to that same quality level again. And but yeah, but I watched. I think I maybe saw the pilot. I don't remember exactly what the show. I think it was like a crime solving show, wasn't it? Something like that. They'd use like psychological stuff. um, yeah, 'cause I remember being on, but actually a show I really like. You can watch it on YouTube. That was on in the '90s. It was only on for a season. You can find it on YouTube. Is Strange Luck with DB something is the actor in it. Um, it was a Chris Carter show. Chris Carter did all the X Files stuff. Um, that was a really good show. Another show I found out's on YouTube as well is Nowhere Man. Uh, both of these only lasted a season, so there's like 20 episodes or whatever of the shows, but they only lasted for one season. Um, yeah, it was like a psychology thing or something. Again, I think my mom watched it, so I may have seen like episodes when she was watching it, because she likes the crime dramas a lot, like Hercule Poirot and that stuff. Monk, so they're ones that she watched a lot of. Yeah, but those two shows, Strange Luck and Nowhere Man, they're both on YouTube, which I thought was interesting. I like a lot of those kind of those quirky shows from the '90s, like those two, or what's it called? Due South, which is great. Got a Boy Scout type Mountie who hangs out with this Chicago detective, and they solve crimes together. There was a three seasons of that. Um, I have the DVDs for that I bought, back when Media Play was still around. I would keep my eye out for like DVD sets of that stuff out there. I have all the X Files on DVD from then. Yeah, I've noticed that. Like they're talking about bringing back Arnold Schwarzenegger to play like Old Man Conan. Um, so yeah, I'm surprised they haven't brought. Yeah, they are bringing X Files back with Ryan Coogler, but I guess it's more of like a sequel rather than a remake. So they're going to try and do that. The problem with the X Files though is like match that relationship between uh, Mulder and Scully. So Dave Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, which is a lot of what the show is based off of. And when he left the show, for years, came back kind of for the end of it, and then some of the relatively recent sequels over the last 10 years or whatever. Um, it's just never been the same since. So I have a feeling that if they try to do it again, it's just not gonna work out. Yeah, so yeah, I saw that with. I think what it is, a lot of these studios they're spending a lot of money, like insane amounts of cash on these shows. TV shows even. That's why does it take so long? Is they're heavy on special effects. So like Alien Earth, right? So that came out. It was okay. You could tell like the guy didn't really want to make an alien movie. He wanted to make a movie about the eyeball alien. But um, so the alien was a kind of secondary plot point. It's like a background element. There were some great scenes of it chopping people up though, in some of the earlier episodes. But because it's so effects heavy, it takes a long time to make, and you can only make so many because they're expensive. And so, but nowadays, we get shows that last, they'll have like 8 to 10 episodes, and they come out every 3 years. And you saw what that did to Stranger Things. It just kind of really derailed the whole project. Um, so yeah, they do all these really really heavy effect shows, and then I think because of the way digital cameras work, a lot of the times, like digital production, is they kind of put a lot of the work onto post production for creating a show, and so that they rely a lot on the digital and the special effects and all the background CGI computer graphics to like make the shows work. And so it takes them just a long time to make anything, which is ironic because this stuff should be making it faster, right? These shows should come out more often. The technology itself is getting cheaper and easier to use. Supposedly, the generative AI stuff is supposed to fix everything. Um, Supposedly, right? Like if it works as well as they say it does, like it should just make these shows a lot easier to do and come out. Um, but that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing these very very slow production schedules. Whereas you look at the X Files or Star Trek back in the Star Trek Next Generation or Deep Space Nine or even Voyager or Enterprise, like they'd have 25, 26 episodes in a single season. They had two sets of recording times where they would record in the summer and in the winter or whatever, the fall, and for their releases. And but like you look at X Files and you've got there's 11 seasons now, but the original nine or 12 seasons, something like that. But the original nine from the 90s, I mean that's like 180, 200 episodes plus a movie. Um, but and they didn't. You had a strong sense of all the tech and what was going on. You didn't need an extreme amount of effects and things going on in the show beyond like really good lighting and staging and blocking. Um, it's like you look at a lot of shows today, and then you look at how like Steven Spielberg would block a show. He's still alive. He's got a show coming out this summer, a movie. Um, and um, but yeah, they had to kind of get things right. I'm feeling like that's part of the problem with digital work in general, is we kind of treat it as something we can kind of put off the quality for later. The improvements till later that you do. Um, and so you're not paying the kind of attention at the beginning of the production of something that you should be, because you can always just put it off. You can kind of push that off onto post production. Um, yeah, so it's supposed to be, but yeah, again, yeah, and then the quality's going down, and there's all these other issues associated with it. But it's just weird to me that they talk about it as if it makes things so much easier and better. And I've been, because I was someone who adopted digital art very early back, when I was in school in 2000. Well, actually, I think I got my first tablet, I think in 1999 or 2000. Probably 2000. Um, Wacom Intuos tablet that I basically wore out till the cable fell off on it. And had to do a lot of the training on my own because we had very limited digital illustration classes back then. Most of my professors, except for like one or two of my adjunct professors, were primarily traditional media and analog illustrators. They weren't digital. They weren't doing concept art or whatever. Um, and so, but I picked up pretty quick, and then used that a lot professionally. Um, a long time. But I've also always been using the analog stuff at the same time, the traditional media, oil painting and wash, pencils and pens, and all that good stuff. Um, so um, yeah, so but, the AI stuff has kind of made me want to lean back into that, even for stuff like this. Not just the fine art stuff or the life painting stuff, but also just for general work, and make more things for myself. So I'm working on my little comic book project. I'll be inking that this afternoon. But yeah, so again, when they were shooting these shows, though, like they had to go out there and plan things. You see all these posts on Twitter all the time where they're commenting on the reflections in Scully's glasses in the X-Files. Like there's these shots where like there's the blue light of the computer or something reflecting in her glasses that she would wear. And people would keep commenting on like, why don't we see this kind of thing anymore? Why don't we see this kind of careful lighting? Everything, you know, like a Netflix show, even shows I like The Birds. I think it's called The Birds. Um, like they always have like this blue tint to everything, and that's because they're filming things with HDR cameras and then editing them in post. And you know they're hoping to get the color right in post so that they can kind of shoot different times or different lighting circumstances and kind of unify, which is what HDR kind of allows you to do. What that means is that when they're out there actually shooting it, they're not really paying that much attention to how the color works. And people have been contrasting that with like Pluribus that came out recently, which is the guy who does like Breaking Bad. It's his new show that he did on Apple TV. And there's gonna be long breaks in those seasons too. I think there's 8 to 10 episodes in that. And but you can tell he's like actually planning out his shots more carefully. There's a strong use of color, especially blues and yellows, and to get my reading glasses out to use the tiny details like that. So so yeah, there are people that are really good, but again, he's still taken a long time to make this show. Like, it doesn't seem like there's that strong of a reason if he knows where the show's going, why it should take years between seasons. Like, you should know exactly what he wants to do, have it laid out. He's done. Vince Gilligan, that's the name of the guy. I mean, you know, forget how many episodes were in like a single season of Breaking Bad, but that was pretty substantial, if I recall. It wasn't like it was 10 episode seasons or anything. But they never check with me on these things, so I don't get it. You think they would? I've got all these great ideas. No one ever asked me what I think. I don't think I'm that expensive. Yeah, but yeah, a lot of ways, yeah, a lot of the digital stuff has made things objectively worse, and I'm not sure quite what to do about it. Like, I've spent actually a lot of time looking at my old mini disc players on eBay, and Sony, I think, has announced they're no longer making the discs. Like, they've ceased manufacturing the actual discs themselves. But I had one for a year or two, I think, before I got like a DVD or a CDR player. Um, you could pack a lot more onto a CD, RW, or whatever. And then we could onto a mini disc player, even though the format's a little bit larger, obviously, right? But I kind of miss that DVD, the mini disc player, because it had that nice little chunk when you closed it, and the discs were all kind of cool looking and all that good stuff. Um, Yes, the process called enshittification, Cory Doctorow, Doctrow. He's written a number of books on it, none of which are available on Amazon or Audible because he doesn't like those companies. Some kind of deal that he doesn't like with the profit split, so he doesn't publish with them. There's lots of interviews you can find. He talks about the process, how it works, kind of getting people into ecosystems that they rely on, like Facebook or whatever, and then they just kind of stay. And then the people that are making them, they start making them worse for the users and even for people that are advertising on them in order to like extract more resources from them, more time or more attention, more money. They actively make it worse. Like if you're on Facebook, for example, like it can be really hard just to find info on your friends, like the people you actually want to see. There's all this extra junk in there. It's like, here's this other thing you're not following. Here's this other thing you're not following. Here's this other thing, and they're doing that to kind of force you to stay online longer on the system. There's actually a feed you can go into on Facebook that will only show you your friends plus ads. You know, which I'm not as angry by the ads. It's the other junk that kind of annoys me. But there is actually a feed you can set on there. It's just your friends feed. And I often just go over there. For a while, I was really confused when they changed the whole thing. I would like see all this stuff and block it. Uh, it's kind of like YouTube. Like they like to show you, like, oh, this is like bongo drums day or something. Here's a bunch of videos for bongo drums. And I'm like, why would I want to watch anything to do with that? It'd be some big banner. Or, you know, here's juggling. I'm like, I have no interest in juggling. Why is this thing here? Or you hit the button that says show fewer shorts, and then they'd bring it back the next day. Even though I never watched them. I'll have a good time at your work meeting. I need to get off here in a little bit of myself, get some lunch in me, and then get to the inking stuff. I'm just having a good time. You know, I like painting knotted materials together, and it should be a lot easier to paint. I need to I'm going to cut this off after I'm done here, so I can access this image more easily. Yeah, but I need to move on to the next thing myself. Shadows. Well, I've got the paint mixed. I think it helped to use that airbrush. All right. Yeah, so I should probably stop there. It's 11:30. That's enough time, right? That's like 3 hours. Yeah, we're coming up on 3 hours, 10 minutes. So get focused on me. We're gonna have like a nice dark day out there. It's really wet. I think a 50-degree drop overnight. Yeah, thanks.